in regards to our relationship and how it's progressed from the first year to now, it's a story, it's a journey, right? So it's not like, okay, year one was I rated a 5. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's like it's a journey, right? So you
It's
have to,
more than a 5, right?
yeah, no, of course.
People
But,
know,
but,
like,
the thing is like, even on a road trip, like think about a road trip, right? You start from the
Mhm.
beginning, right? And it isn't about reaching the end of the destination or reaching the destination. It's about the journey in between, right? That's where life happens, right? So that's something that's to be celebrated. And when you kind of humble yourself and just think like, okay, we're gonna experience this together, whether this
Yeah.
is positive or negative, we're going to experience and do this together. And when you do
Yeah.
life together, that's when you see the beauty of it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my comfy couch. Today I'm so excited. I have a beautiful couple that's online with us today. Say hi, Kenny. Say hi, Carla.
Hello, hello.
So, Kenny and Carla, how long have you guys been married?
About almost 2 years now.
Yep, 2 years in
Almost
July.
2 years. Okay, so before we get started, our whole topic today is because listen, when I asked you guys what you wanted to hear about for this coming year, you guys told me you wanted to hear about some newlyweds to find out how they're adjusting to married life. So this discussion is for you. So pay attention, all of you singles thinking about getting married. If you're newly married, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to adjust to marriage life. But before I start, I want Carla, I want to give you a shout out, Carla. Tell me the work that you're doing with your channel here.
So hi everybody, my name is Carla Lopez, and I'm actually have a Instagram channel called The Daily Chat. It's like The Daily Chat, and I talk about daily motivation and daily devotionals we have on there, along with some traveling that we do. We have something that we're launching very soon, so I'm excited to share that with everybody. That'll be coming up very soon, probably like a month or so. So,
Yeah.
but if you're interested in that, go check out the channel.
Oh my God, what's gonna launch? Is it a secret? Is it a surprise?
You gotta tune in for the rest of the video.
We're almost done with the casting process.
Hey,
I
this is
love
the
it. I love it. I want to say that I'm really supportive of you guys. I speak to Kenny often, and it just seems like you guys are really, trying to do it right. So I really thought you guys were a great example to be on the show to give folks some insight. Because another thing about Kenny is he's real, and he always has like really good feedback when I speak to him. So I really am looking forward to this conversation. So y'all check Carla out, please, and support what she's doing. So let's get into it. Before you guys were actually married, what was your living situation like, both of y'all?
Right. Well, I was living at home with my parents and Carla as well, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So we both were living at home. We didn't cohabitate beforehand. One other thing about us as a couple, we're Christians, so we don't believe in like cohabitation. We're very,
That's
uh,
one.
yeah, we're very old school and traditional in that sense. And we actually got together during COVID, so it made it a little bit harder to like travel and
What?
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So
So
a little bit about our story too.
yeah.
Kenny and I, we were college, I guess, what do you say, college friends, like study partners, along with another group back at college. And we were just getting through our major at the time, and we were just friends. And then once we graduated, we went on our separate journeys.
Yeah.
And then years later, like 6 or 7 years later,
Yeah, we ran into each other again. And
literally,
the love
yes.
story kind of blossomed from there.
And then he pretended not to see me.
Yeah.
And then
Well, the story is right.
you gonna tell the real version?
I'll tell you the real version,
Okay.
right? I was at the movie theaters
Oh gosh.
with my family, and I saw someone who looked like Carla from a distance. And as soon as I saw her, I wasn't sure it was her because she was on a date. She was actually holding hands with somebody.
See, Carla, you weren't telling the whole story.
And I just remember her darting out the theater, and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, did I do something? I was trying to remember what happened like back in the day, but I waited like a week, and when it's slid into the DMs a little bit, just to see where she was at, because I remember she had been married previously, so it was interesting. I didn't know what her status was, and then lo and behold, I saw that she was single. We reconnected as friends in the beginning, and I just learned about her story, learned about her journey,
Yeah.
and we just the chemistry and the friendship that we had built from back in the day just like resurfaced again, and it was as if, like the next day, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. And there's so many different aspects in there that I love. First of all, the whole friendship, because I think that's a big thing. People are just skipping to the sleeping together, let's do this relationship thing before becoming real friends. So I love that. And also, I love that what I'm seeing very often is that kind of second chance type thing. It's so weird that a lot of the couples I see that make it, there was some point where, okay, it didn't work out and they came back together and things worked out. So that's really interesting too. So tell me, guys, so you said you were living apart, but what was the dynamic like? Like, were you guys both in mom-dad situation? Like, what was it like at your living situation? And
Right.
what roles did the mom or dad in your house play? Because that's really what I wanted to touch on as well, is how we see our, parents grow up and if we're having those kinds of expectations for our partner. So can you guys touch on that a bit?
Right. So like with me, my situation, we had two different goals, like from singlehood, right? So my situation was I was working, I was saving up money for my first investment property. I was at home, I was working, trying to scrounge up and save as much money as I could. And then also Carla was going through her own process and her own journey and her own story. So I can speak from my end where I wasn't necessarily looking for a relationship or looking for um, like actively searching because I had gone through that whole journey. So I was in the process of kind of just building myself, and just being at home gave me the liberty to kind of do what I want. My parents are not that strict at that point because I was already grown. I was paying and my own bills. I was very self sufficient. Um, but no, like my house is just very peaceful, loving environment. Grew up in a two-parent household, healthy relationship, Christian household, Christian couple, and we were all raised with values and morals that we still uphold today. And Carla was raised in the same way, so it was. And I want to just stress this: like when you're looking for someone, it's important to find someone who's evenly yoked, someone who is and shares the same types of values and the same types of worldview as you, because you'll find nowadays that when you get with somebody, they might, check up all the boxes on paper, but then when you guys start analyzing and comparing the ways that you guys look at the world, how you treat others, how you treat your family, how you treat relationships, you find that there's a lot of different things, religion, children, all this stuff. There's a lot of differences. So you got to make sure that you guys are evenly yoked, and that just happened to be the situation with Carla and I. And I had an idea of how she was because back in college, one of the things that we bonded on, besides like schoolwork and stuff, I say to this day, like she really made me a good student because I'm like, hey, I want to stay after class and study. But one of the things that we really bonded on was like our love for Christ, the way that we saw the world, our morals, our ethics, our family units. So that's kind of my situation and where I came from at the time. Before I met her again after those like 7 years.
And my situation, so I, like you said, was previously married, and I had lived with someone, my husband at the time, and then got divorced. And at the time, I could have chosen to like stay in the city that I was living in, or my mom was also a new widow. So she was also going through her transitional time, and it kind of just all worked out that it would have been best for me to go live with her and just like still support her in that season because she was by herself. She was still now learning what it was like to live on her own, go through life on her own. And so was I, to be quite honest. So we were both in similar seasons, but still different. Right. And so I was still healing and just learning what that season for me of being single again would look like. And also just trying to be there for my mom as well. But yeah, I also was raised in mom and dad household. Both my parents were together until my dad passed away. They were very lovey-dovey. My dad was always hugging up on my mom. So I was always seeing them be extremely affectionate and caring for each other, and really saw what it meant to be like till death do us part, right. Essentially.
Yeah, like a actual healthy, loving marriage. And that's something that, unfortunately you don't see as often.
Exactly.
So You know, a lot of people when they get into relationships, they haven't dealt with a lot of the traumas and things they've gone through, scars that haven't healed, and they create new cuts, new wounds.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, so that's great because I don't think people do enough research, background research about who they're dating, because all that does make a big difference. The
Yeah.
fact that you both grew up with Christian morals, you both saw a loving, healthy family. I mean, that is huge. And I think that's the kind of conversations people do need to have. And
Yeah.
as you mentioned, see if they overcame any traumas
Right.
from their upbringing. So I love that. Now
Yeah.
let's talk about gender role. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
I did want to add too that just because you didn't grow up in a two-person household doesn't mean that you're not going to have a healthy marriage going forward. Just means that you have a little bit of work to do in regards to maybe seeking therapy. Maybe if there are situations or are issues that are impairing you from being in healthy relationships, or you find yourselves in like the same types of habits, there might be some issues in there that haven't been dealt with due to some not having one of the parents in the household. And that often happens. And there's like a big stigma against therapy, a big stigma against like seeking help and overcoming those issues. But there's nothing wrong with a little self-work, and you want to be the best version of yourself so you can love your partner and your spouse as good as you can.
Absolutely. Love it. So I love that you did clarify that, Kenny, because I
Yeah.
don't want people to think that because they didn't grow up in a Christian home or they didn't grow up with both parents that they're not going to have a successful marriage. So thank you so much for pointing that out. But you do have to do the work, right? Identify what a healthy marriage is supposed to look like. And if you're having any issues, to go ahead and seek help. So I like that too. What was the dynamic? What were the roles, the gender roles with both of your parents? Did you guys grow up with the typical, male is the primary the primary one that goes out and works and brings home the money, and the mom is more the kind of stay at home type person? What was the dynamic like in terms of gender roles for both of you with your parents?
Okay, yeah. So this is a great question because we were talking about this because this was one of the things we had. It was a challenge in our relationship because we were kind of brought up separately. We were both come from Hispanic households. So with Hispanics, like you already know, like mama, she's cooking, she's cleaning, she has like all the hands.
Taking care of the kids.
Yeah, all of that. However, even though we both are Hispanic, we have Latin backgrounds, it still was very different. So in my household, I would see kind of like mixed gender roles. My dad had no problem vacuuming, mopping. I would often see him cooking, doing the dishes. So I would see him do what a woman would be supposed to do, or what my mom would only be supposed to do. So to me, it's very normal for me to be like, oh, a guy does wash dishes. A guy, does pick up the broom, because my dad was just a hands-on kind of dad and a hands-on kind of husband. And our philosophy in our marriage is really like, if you see a need, fill a need. And that's just something that I've adopted from my dad. And so for us, it's not only like, if you see a need in the marriage, you can, if you see a pile of dishes, like do the dishes, or if you see something needs to be picked up, like you go ahead and you take that effort in doing that. For your household, how was that like?
Yeah, so with my household, it was like the traditional like gender roles. So my dad was the breadwinner. My mom worked very hard, but my mom also came from the Dominican Republic. She didn't have an education here. She was a dental assistant back home, but when she came here, her credentials didn't, transfer. So she had to kind of start from scratch. But luckily, my dad had gotten a scholarship to study here in America. So he became an engineer, became the breadwinner of the family. And my mom was working, cleaning houses. She was doing what she needed to do, as well as taking care of 4 kids. So both were working hard, but in different ways. And as my parents, as the relationship kept growing and they got older, my mom started had the time and the ability after we got a little bit older to go after her passions. And she was doing hair back in DR on the side, and she ended up making that her profession here. So she became a cosmetologist. She ended up having a full-blown career, right? Had her own salon and everything. But in the beginning, it was those traditional gender roles. And even now, I see them to some extent, but it's a team effort, and it takes humility, and it takes patience, and it takes understanding to understand, to acknowledge that just because someone is a woman, or just because someone is a man, and just because these roles are there, there are some things that you can do. It's not an excuse for being lazy. It's not an excuse for, well,
giving the other responsibility.
and you love your partner, right? So you want to be able to serve them, and that's what marriage is. It's serving one another. Every
Yes. Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
So it's great to see, again, these are things people don't talk about, talk about, what role do you see yourself playing in this marriage, and what have you seen growing up? Because like you said, even though you grew up both Christian, both loving families, you still had a different dynamic between the parents. So that's something that's really important. Now, when it came into your marriage now, was that an issue for you guys at first in trying to adjust to what your expectations were for your roles in the marriage?
Right.
So
do you wanna?
Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna keep it real. It was a struggle. It was like one of the biggest challenges for us, and what we learned to like. I'm not trying to be like corny or like cliche, but like we honestly just communicated through it, and I just knew like if we didn't communicate like, hey, why do you feel that I should be the only one to do the dishes, or why? Like I would find myself doing my duties and then kind of saying like, okay, like you're gonna do the trash, or like typical meal responsibilities, and I would find myself just getting like a little upset about it, because to me I'm like, okay, well, like you can also cook dinner if I'm running late from work or whatever the case is. And we learned really on is like communication and overly communicating is honestly the best way to solve any conflict. And any relationship that you guys find yourself in a conflict, instead of saying like, oh my gosh, we're always fighting, turn it around and saying like, wow, we're learning how to solve this new issue, and then now we'll tackle it. Because every conflict, and this is the way I perceive it, is another way for you to grow in your relationship, because now that isn't an issue because we spoke about it, we created boundaries, we created things that we're like, okay, I'm comfortable with that, you're comfortable with that, you don't feel like I'm como aprovechando, like
right. And I just want to add that like that's such a great point about over communicating, right? Because there's a difference between listening and communicating to understand and communicating to just fight. A lot of couples, what they do is fight, and that's just talking to attack the argument, talking to attack the person, and that's a contradictory to what actual healthy communication is supposed to look like, which is understanding each other's viewpoints, and having enough humility, right, to admit or acknowledge when you're wrong, which takes a lot of hard work.
Exactly.
One of the things for me is that I did come from a household that had traditional roles, and she came from a household that both the parents were very involved in some of the things that were contrary to traditional roles, right? So one of the things we had to do was sit down, talk about, okay, what are some of the things that you're good at? What are some of the things that you feel comfortable trusting me in? And what are some of the things that I feel comfortable trusting you in? And having enough humility to say, okay, I'm going to divert to your expertise. And the thing is that a lot of people think that, well, gender roles are set in stone. A healthy relationship and a healthy couple are people who have gotten to the maturity level, right? Where they're able to divert, or they're able to submit to the other person's expertise in a particular task or project or whatever it is, because not everyone is a know-it-all, not everyone can do it all, but you have a partner and a spouse who is a helpmate, who is someone supposed to be that other half for you, that's going to be able to help and support you in whatever it is. And for Carla and I, that looks different in many ways, right? And some of the things she submits to me to handle, and some of the things I submit to her to handle, and it's for the good of the team, for the good of our marriage and our partnership.
Wow.
And also, I wanted to add, like, always just find like the root of the problem of whatever you guys are arguing about, because I love what you asked, right? Is like, what did our parents' relationship look like? Because that really is the reason my perception might be a little bit jaded or different, because it's like what I saw in my parents, I now bring to my marriage, and I say, well, this is normal to me. However, his upbringing looks normal to him. So you just have to say, like, if you find yourself in that type of conflict, hey, like, why do you feel that way? And how did your parents treat the situation? What did you see your mom and dad do? Because it's really just like that simple question that can open up the reason like why they see that, and then you guys create your own solution or your own like
your own way of doing things.
Doing it for your own family.
And I wanted to add on top of that is that it's your marriage, right? Not your parents' marriage, not your friend's marriage. You guys decide as a couple and as a unit what you decide to bring into your marriage and what you decide to leave out of it.
Yeah.
So if you want to break generational curses, if you want to,
come on.
if you want to break certain things that you notice are bad habits in each other, then you decide that as a unit. You say, okay, this is something that we're not bringing into our marriage. This is something that we're not going to allow to become the norm. Because if you allow if you allow unhealthy habits to form early on, they're just going to grow progressively. So you really have to make a stance and be on the same page in the beginning. And that comes from having hard conversations with each other. It comes with being real with each other and authentic, and not being afraid to be judged, right? Because a lot of times people don't say what's really on their mind from fear that their partner might judge them or not agree or combat them or think of them in a different way. So,
y'all, you know, I have to turn the camera off and let y'all talk this whole time, because you guys are really spitting some really, really good information. I love it. So I'm trying to remember some of the things that stuck out to me. One definitely was that you guys, the whole how you viewed your conflict. It wasn't viewed as, hey, we're fighting so much. It's, hey, we're learning to adjust. We're learning each other. We're learning how to overcome these different issues that we're having. So I love that. That is a different perspective, because you guys are coming from, you know, two different worlds and you're trying to come together. So you are learning each other and these conflicts come up. So I love that. Another thing I love you said about the communication and seeing from the other person's shoes, because I think that's something huge that people don't do, is understanding, why is this person feeling this way? Why are they having this expectations? And when you can get outside of yourself and see from that person's perspective, then that could really change how you proceed. But trust has a lot to do with it, because you have to trust that, hey, when this person is saying this, they're really being honest. It's not that they're just trying to get over on you. They're not just trying to be lazy. This person is expressing to you their true self. So many parts of what you said I love. I really, really do love. So those are really great keys for people here. So now that it's been 2 years, because I've often heard that the first year is really the hardest, that you do have a lot going on, because again, you're uniting here. Do you feel that it is getting easier? You're in year 2, almost 2 now, almost 2 is over. What do you guys think? Do you think it's getting better? Are you adjusting more? Or are you seeing, hey, that was year's 1 challenge, now year 2, we've got other things going on? What do you think, like in terms of progression? What should newlyweds kind of, expect?
I mean, I can speak a little bit to that, and then I'll pass it on to you to add. But a lot of people say that the first year is the hardest, and I say that's like all perception, right? Whenever you're going into something, you always have to have the best in mind, because if not, if you come into it with the worst in mind, that it's going to be the toughest, hardest year, you're going to have the toughest, hardest year. So for us, like, we had moments and situations that were hard, but it led us to growth. And the amount of great, like, just loving, fruitful moments in our marriage were all through the first year, because it was the year first, right? You're experiencing the first things with your partner. So the first year is definitely something that you have to take, like, change your perception is. And that's not just in marriage, that's in anything in life, right? So, like, if you're, applying to a job and you think that you're not going to be good enough for it, or they're not going to pay any attention to your resume because of X, Y, and Z, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy type of thing. So you always have to think with the best in mind. In regards to our relationship and how it's progressed from the first year to now, it's not a how do I say this? It's a story. It's a journey, right? So it's not like, okay, year 1 was I rated a 5. You know what I mean? It's not like that. It's like, it's a journey, right? So
it's more than a 5, right?
No, of course.
People know. Like,
the thing is like, even on a road trip, like, think about a road trip, right? You start from the beginning, right? And it isn't about reaching the end of the destination or reaching the destination. It's about the journey in between, right? That's where life happens, right? So that's something that's to be celebrated. And when you kind of humble yourself and just think, like, okay, we're going to experience this together, whether this is positive or negative, we're going to experience and do this together. And when you do life together, that's when you see the beauty of it.
Yes, love it. Well said. Carla,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was into it. So similar to what Kenny said, like I see it the same way. I mean, you can relate it to how he said a road trip, or even like an infant, right? When a baby's first born, like those couple months, like you're learning the baby's learning you. They're learning all what's normal, like what time they have their milk, what time they go to sleep, their new routines. But that season is not going to be that season forever. It's not the lifetime of what that baby's journey looks like. It's just a little chapter of it. And then even when they grow up, you go back and you're like, oh my gosh, you remember when they were so little? I miss this, I miss that. And when you first get married, how Kenny said, like, you can go into it saying, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard. We're two people. I wonder what he's going to be like. Or you can say, like, man, I'm so excited to do life with my husband. I'm so excited to see, like, what excites him or what he finds challenging, and how I can, like, walk alongside him and help him. So it's really changing your perception about how you, one, view challenges, two, view this new chapter that you're going into. And just, I think, like how he said, there are going to be some hard times. I don't want to like pretend like, oh my gosh, it'll be amazing. There are going to be some hard times, but it's just a season. It's not going to be the lifetime or necessarily like the longevity of your marriage.
Right.
Love it.
And that's only if you guys do the work in the beginning. So like there's a saying that says like smooth seas never made a skilled sailor, right? So trials and turbulence like make for a more experienced and skillful person. So as you go through challenges, as you go through trials, you guys learn and grow and know how to better navigate situations. However, in the very beginning is when you got to do the work. Before you guys even get married, that's when the majority of the work needs to take place, because that's when you guys actually figure out if is this person for me. And then for us, like it wasn't just kind of like dating, right? Because we already had known each other for 7 years ago, and we spent a whole year just like constant communication, learning about each other, right? So I already had a relationship with Carla in the sense of we built an amazing friendship. And when we reconnected, the friendship continued on. But now it was learning each other on a more romantic level, and then also figuring out, okay, is this person going to be my wife, right? And I had to really reflect and pray and ask those hard questions. And the good thing about it is that we're both at a level of maturity where we're like, okay, we're ready to take this next step. And neither of us wanted to play games. Neither of us wanted to waste time. So we put our cards on the table and said, hey, these are our expectations. This is what I envision marriage to look like. This is what you envision marriage to look like. We compared that stuff early on. We compared our walks in faith with one another, how we viewed certain topics in the Bible. And it helped us grow. And then we started talking about what holidays were going to look like, how conflict is handled, how our family dynamics were, how we were going to raise children. Like, now all those conversations didn't happen on the first night, but
it was prior to us getting married.
But it happened throughout the relationship. We had these organic conversations. And so if you're thinking you're gonna on the first date ask them, okay, X, Y, and Z, like no, this is out throughout our dating, right? And the great thing is about dating in COVID is that we had a lot of opportunities to just have deep, heartfelt conversations, because we couldn't go out, we couldn't experience some of the things that typical couples experience. But that made our first year of marriage so much more fruitful, because we had that opportunity to go out and experience these moments, right? But definitely doing the work and making sure that you ask those important questions, figure out if you guys want the same things, because that's important, you know?
Wow. And like I said, that a lot of people don't do that. They skip all of that and they go straight to the romantic intimacy part. So this is a great example of when you do the work, when you do ask the right questions, go the right route, how things can really work out. So thank you guys so much for being an example of that.